Hello and welcome to Dollars and Cents, the Australia Institute podcast where we're talking about just what the hell is going on in the economy. I'm Elinor Johnston-Leake, the senior content producer here at the Australia Institute, and as always, I'm talking to our chief economist, Greg Jericho. Hello, Greg.
Hi, Elinor.
How are we doing today? Chipper.
Oh, yeah. We've avoided Armageddon this week, so everything's looking sweet.
We got to look on the bright side of what has happened in the last week.
Bright side of everything.
Yeah.
Yes, there's silver linings just everywhere. It's no dark clouds on the horizon.
No mushroom-shaped clouds on the horizon.
Such a good week of news.
So far.
Let's get into it.
Yeah, well, it definitely has been something of a roller coaster of emotions this week. As we are alluding to, Trump threatened to commit genocide in Iran, posting on Truth Social that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. So that was Monday night. And then he backed down. That was Tuesday morning, said Iran has 2 weeks, I guess. There was a brief ceasefire. Iran said the Strait of Hormuz was going to be opened again. And then just this morning, after I'd already written all my questions for this episode, Iran's said that the Strait of Hormuz is going to be closed still because Israel is bombing Lebanon, which they don't think is part of this ceasefire deal. So it's really just been all over the place, hasn't it, Greg? Obviously, you know, the biggest point here being Trump threatening genocide is truly horrific. And I guess if listeners want to hear more about that, they're probably better off going and listening to Dr. Emma Shortis on After America. She'll have a podcast out Tuesday. Emma will have a lot more to say about this. But Greg, this is the Australian Economics podcast. So let's bring the focus back to Australian economics here. When someone, I guess, this volatile as Donald Trump holds the nuclear football, what's it like as an economist trying to, I guess, predict anything at the moment?
God, what a 48 hours. I mean, we really, it's so easy in the years of Trump to just almost sane wash by humor away what he did when he was threatening to destroy Iran and all Iranians. You know, destroying a civilization, you know, there's always these sort of, is this genocide or not? That's genocide. And, you know, and there was so much even on our own ABC, but, you know, New York Times and just about every media organization around the world just trying to, you know, Donald Trump has issued some provocative things and, you know, and we're not even talking about the post where he's swearing about, you know, open the fucking strait or else, you know, it's just, the bloke is completely insane. Yeah. I'm just going to say he is not well. He is someone who does not have control of his faculties. He responds to stimulus of where he thinks people have, said something against him.
Personally wronged him.
Slighted him. And most of it's all made up in his head. He can't admit error, so he leans into stupid decisions even more. And on top of that, he backs down on all these threats because, you know, America likes to talk big, but unless they were going to nuke the whole thing, you can't destroy a country without actually sending in ground troops and no sane military. There would be a lot of generals at the very least saying, this is going to end in tens of thousands of deaths of Americans. But when you sort of say, you know, what's this happening? How's it for an economist and things? You look at, for example, when he put out the post saying, a deal's been made, it's a dual ceasefire and everything. Yeah. The markets went nuts. They were like, happy days. This is a great thing. Everyone was buying everything. Except for poor Santos and Woodside, who suddenly, you know, because oil prices dropped about 13% in an hour, you know, suddenly the gas companies had a bad day, poor them. But everyone reacted like, when Trump says something, it's true. And the big problem was he was saying, oh, Iran has sent a 10-point peace plan and we can work with it. We can, negotiate around this. And like the 10-point peace plan had been there before he made the threats,
Yeah.
And it had been rejected out of hand because, well, if America agreed to it, it would be handing Iran a generational victory. It gave Iran control of the Strait of Hormuz and be charging a boat. Every boat that went past was going to be charged $2 million for passing the Strait of Hormuz, which prior to a month ago was free.
Yeah.
Now it's going to cost $2 million.
And was it half of that was going to Oman?
Oman.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was just extraordinary. And everyone reacted like, oh, wow, this is amazing. It's great. And like, one, Israel's not going to agree to this. And they didn't. They didn't. And also Trump loves backing down and claiming a victory when there isn't a victory. And yet everyone, all the markets, everyone reacted like, oh, this is going to last. And it's like, guys, but I think also one of the problems with Trump, and we've seen this again and again with things like the tariffs and everything, when he threats things that are so absurd, so over the top, the 500% tariffs on China. And then he backs down and says, oh, I won't do that. But instead it's like an 80% tariff or something, whatever. Everyone's like, oh, that's great. It's like, it used to be 0, and now it's 8. And it's just this again and again, we see this same washing of what Trump does, what he threatens.
The short-term memory for his pattern of behavior.
Yeah, people are saying, oh, well, he didn't follow through. The actual threat is a war crime. Any other national leader of any nation would be tarred forever with this. And instead with Trump, we're like, oh, geez, that was 2 days ago, move on, and it's like the guy is completely unhinged.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows what's going to happen? And that's not helpful for me writing a column this week on what's going to happen.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, bringing it back, I guess, to an Australian economy focus, your column in The Guardian this week, you were drawing a parallel between this current fuel crisis and the OPEC oil crisis back in the 70s. Are you telling me, Greg, that history may actually, in fact, repeat itself?
Look, possibly. I mean, the reason I wrote the column was there'd been a lot of articles around asking economists, are we going to have a recession? And in fact, Matt Grudenoff was interviewed for one of them. And look, it's, as I point out at the start of the column, it's hard to predict that anything is off the table when you've got Donald Trump, because who the hell knows? And things changed between me starting writing the column, my writing the column, and my finish writing the column. Things had all sort of changed. It went from he's going to commit genocide to there's a deal being made, and by the time I was finishing it, Israel was continuing his bombing. It's like, this was in the space of writing a column.
Yeah.
The reason why everyone was worrying about a recession is because they're looking back to the 1970s, especially 79, 80, 81, where when there was the Iran Revolution, basically oil prices spiked again because Iran, blocked oil and OPEC were also involved, and oil prices soared, much like they did back in 73 as well, when OPEC wound back supply as well in response to the Yom Kippur War. And what everyone's worried about is a thing called stagflation.
Which sounds fancy.
Yeah, it doesn't sound good either. I mean, stagflation doesn't sound like a thing anyway. It sounds like something you catch and there's no virus for.
Yeah.
Basically, it's a combination of a stagnant economy and inflation.
Both don't sound like they go well together.
No, because normally when an economy is stagnant or like you're in a recession, inflation is generally pretty low because there's just no demand, there's no spending, everything's crap. And generally when there's lots of inflation, that's because everyone is actually out spending madly and, things are almost, as they say, running too hot. Stagflation is when you've got both happening at the same time. And it generally only happens when the inflation is caused by an outside factor that's beyond the economy's control or the government's control, such as an Iran war.
Yeah. So not, everyone in Australia is getting paid too much and has too much spare cash.
No, completely the opposite. In fact, everyone in Australia feels like they're doing it tough and are struggling and people aren't spending. And yet prices are going up because oil prices are causing costs of everything to go up.
Yep.
And companies, as we saw back in 2022, taking advantage of this to raise prices, and there you go, inflation and stagnation. So that's the big worry. And I sort of so I had a look at it, and of course this is writing it while Trump's making up his mind. And look, the other thing is that these economies didn't go into recession just because oil prices went up. They went into recession because central bank, like the Reserve Bank at the time, decided let's raise interest rates to try and stop inflation.
So this is back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially we saw this in 79, 80, 81. The Reserve Bank, which wasn't independent at the time, so John Howard, who's treasurer, was very much overseeing a lot of this. Interest rates, or the cash rate at the time, it wasn't exactly the cash rate, it was a different little thing, but let's just call it the cash rate, hit 20.88%, and it went up, it went up from 9 to 20, in the space of 18 months, so it really went up high. And the weird thing was they were raising the interest rates even while the economy was in a recession. They kept doing, and it led to, up till then, the worst recession since the Great Depression. It was what we call a double dip recession. There was two recessions pretty much after each other, and really was quite destructive. And then again, we had the same thing in 1990, but for different reasons, where again those interest rates going up caused a recession. Now, that's what everyone's worried is going to happen this time, because they're looking at what the Reserve Bank is sort of saying.
Yeah, they've been raising interest rates.
They've been raising interest rate. Michelle Bullock, the governor of the Reserve Bank, has sort of said, well,
we don't want to have a recession, but if it's hard to get inflation down, then, we're going to have to deal with that, possibly.
So I was sort of looking at all that and going, look, it's possible, but also, one, we're nowhere near that at this point in time. Unemployment is pretty good. It's 4.3%. Yes, it's gone up from 4.1% in January and went up 4.3%, but that's a long way from a recession.
Yeah.
It hasn't been rising anywhere near the speed that you see before a recession. And also, I think people kind of underestimate just what a recession is. They're not these, just bad times. They are brutal times. They are killer times, literally, because they destroy lives. The 1990s recession, there was, almost a generation of men in their 50s who lost jobs in the 1990 recession, never got them again. By the time things came good, they were in their sort of mid to late 50s, and who's hiring them? So they kind of just were unemployed until retirement. And the history of basically male full-time employment since the mid-60s is whenever there's a recession, the percentage of men working full-time drops and it never recovers. And so people sort of look at the COVID and go, oh, we had a recession there. It's like, not really.
Yeah.
It was, yes, technically a recession, but it was forced on us by government around the world deciding, actually, we've got to shut everything down to save lives. And as soon as they opened it up, jobs all came back and everything there was no ongoing horror. Whereas recessions, can take a decade to recover. And so one, I think, given that I would like the Reserve Bank to be a bit more wary of saying things like, well, if we need a recession, we'll do it, because inflation's 4%, maybe it'll get to, maybe 5%, who knows? But, come on.
It's very Lord Farquaad. Some of you may die, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make.
Yeah, and so I'm saying, look, I would hope that if things were to turn bad, the Reserve Bank would stop raising interest rates and start cutting them pretty severely. Government would probably start stimulating the economy. But also, I kind of would hope that the Reserve Bank realises that, and this is what I sort of say at the end, hopefully they're kind of a bit of all talk, a bit like Donald Trump. They're saying these things, but you would hope that they're not going to follow through on it. So, glass half full, we won't have a recession. That's how's that for being optimistic?
I don't know. The glass half full being, hopefully the RBA is like Donald Trump in some ways.
Yeah.
Is that what we want?
God.
Do you want to take that back,
What a
Greg?
horror show we live in.
All right. Well, also in the news this week, though, I'm sure you might not have seen it because the headlines were somewhat dominated by everything else. Matt Canavan, who's the new Nationals leader, made a speech at the National Press Club this week for his economic plan for, and I quote here, Australia on steroids, which was essentially his pitch on how to revive Australia's economy.
A year ago, when I first ran for Nationals leader, the Australian Financial Review put a headline out saying that the Nats populism, the Nationals Party's populism, was a threat to the economic reset for the Liberal Party. And look, I'm not here to speak for the Liberal Party, but I'm also not interested in an economic reset. I think, given the state of our country, we need an economic revolution. We need major, major changes to get things back going again.
Greg, give us the rundown. What is he pitching here?
Well, for a revolution and not a replay, there's a lot of replay going on here. He's got a 6-point plan, and you can sort of detect just how sort of vapid the plan is as you go through the points, especially when you get first one is scrap net zero. So Matt is not a big believer in climate change. So it's, look, perhaps we shouldn't dismiss everything he has to say because of that, but it does save a lot of time. So, he wants to dump the net zero targets. He wants to invest in nuclear, So he wants to basically invest in the most expensive form of energy there is. This is apparently going to be his way to revitalise and revolutionise Australia's economy. Also, again, a replay of previous policies. He wants to close borders to mass migration, whatever mass migration is.
Did he define that?
Yeah, it's, and as our colleague Matt Grudnoff has pointed out, a lot of the migration at the moment is really still just catching up from the
drop during the pandemic.
During the pandemic. And it's pretty much back to where it was during the last, the Morrison, Turnbull, Abbott years, and maybe that is too high for some, but it's not like, we don't have an open border, which is kind of what he's been pushing. Encouraging a new baby boom.
Oh.
Yeah, so this, again, not exactly revolutionary, more a replay. It's not talking so much the baby bonus, but the big thing of Canavan, he's had this for a very long time, is a thing called income splitting, where let's say we're a couple.
Do we have to?
All right, let's say there's a hypothetical couple.
Yeah.
Called Greg and Elinor.
Let's not. This is, I'm going to report you to HR.
Let's say there's a couple.
Yeah.
And
you and your wife who you love.
Who I love.
Yes.
Let's say one of the people, and it's generally a man, is working full-time, and the other partner, generally the woman, is not working at all. Okay? So one person's on, say, 150,000, the other person's on nothing. Income splitting means, for tax purposes, I can split some of my income and give it to you.
Or to your lovely wife who you love.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As in, to the lovely wife. Yeah. And so basically it lowers the tax paid by the main breadwinner.
Yep.
And dumps it on the other partner. And they do this because they think, it's not fair if a single person is on 150,000 that they pay, that someone who's in a couple and only one of them is earning 100,000 and the 150,000, the other one's earning nothing. That's unfair. It's
How is this going to make more babies?
Because it encourages women to not work. Because they can stay not working, and by income splitting, they can reduce their overall tax burden. It's a shocking policy. It's a policy that's been around for many years. Joe Bjelke-Peterson loved it, which is probably where Matt Canavan sort of grew up and heard it. And it's all about, one, delivering tax cuts to rich people, high income earners, and basically making it less advantageous for women to work. Because, even if you are in that situation where you are raising your child and you want to actually do some work, at least under the current system, the first $18,200 you earn is tax-free because of the tax-free threshold. But under income splitting, because you're already basically being given $18,200 from your partner, every dollar you earn is immediately taxed.
Yeah.
And so it discourages people going for work. So that's one of the things he loves doing. Build new cities. I mean, great.
Sure.
All
right.
And protect manufacturing key industries through use of all tools, including tariffs. And look, I'm not.
I mean, tariffs is just, it's on the brain.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of what he's talking about is just old-fashioned protectionism. So again, not revolutionary, a replay of how we were in the 50s and 60s, very protected, a pretty slovenly economy that had high tariff walls, and so we were able to manufacture stuff that wasn't all that great, especially cars. And look, I'm not opposed to some tariffs, small tariffs, but, it's – and then, again, create a national works program to build spaceports. He's really into space. Thinks,
okay,
let's get a space industry
space
going.
program.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. I mean,
and of course, because he's
like
a nationals, he wants dams. He loves dams and roads and rail. And it's not a revolution. It's all just a rehash of nationals kind of stuff from the last 30 years. So look great, but more it's really the ultra protectionism that he's talking about, and he's purely talking about that because of Farah and because he's worried about one nation.
Yeah. There was one thing he said that I thought was quite funny. He said, can anyone explain to me how scrapping the capital gains tax discount would revive the living standards from the abyss they've fallen into? We won't get revival by tinkering around the edges. I just thought it was funny that he thinks that scrapping capital gains tax discount would be tinkering around the edges.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree that tinkering around the edges is, not going to get revival, but I guess we have different ideas about what that looks like.
Yeah, that would be a pretty major tax reform rather than just tinkering. And I think it's,
Yeah, I guess the mass migration cuts is what he thinks is going to get that revival.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. And we've probably got just enough time, Greg, to talk about your column in The Guardian last week, which we actually didn't get to talk about last week, which was looking into the value of land versus the value of the houses on that land. House prices, as we all know, absolutely bonkers, but it's not really the house itself that you're paying for. You're paying for the land. Can you take us through the numbers that you were going through there?
Yeah. What I was writing about was figures that really only come out once a year, and they're looking at wealth. We don't really talk about wealth enough in this country. And the big thing for households is wealth comes from land. And it really struck me a couple of years ago when I was looking at these figures, because normally when you're looking at things like dwelling prices, they just call them dwelling price, and you go, dwelling prices have gone up 5% or whatever.
Yeah.
And that includes everything. That's how much does it cost to buy a house.
Yeah.
And I was looking at these figures in the wealth data, and I looked at dwellings, and I was sort of looking at dwelling growth and going, that doesn't seem much. This really hasn't sort of increased. I'm going, what the hell's going on here? And then I went over a couple columns and like land. And that's where the big growth has been. Now, it didn't always used to be the case. If we go back to the sort of the 80s and 90s, land values were about 1.3 times the value of the dwelling. So if you've got a dwelling that is the house that is worth, say, $200,000, the land on which it was sitting was worth about $260,000.
Okay.
1.3 times.
Yeah.
Now it's about 3 times the value. So that $200,000 house is now sitting on land that's worth $600,000.
Yeah. So you're paying $800,000 all up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And all of the increase really has come from the land, and if you look at sort of Australians' household wealth, the house and land together, dwelling and land, really hasn't increased much as a percent of total wealth. It's a little bit over half. But back in the day, much more of that was the house. Now it's dominated by land. And that really only started happening in the very late 90s. And throughout the past 25 years, it's just completely gone mad. And it really highlights that when we're talking about the Great Australian Dream, buying a home and everything, it's actually buying the land that you're really worried about.
So why has it, as you say, gone mad over the past few years?
Well, because of everything that we've always talked about with these dwelling prices is that we've seen an increase in investment. And let's think about this. If you are a landlord and you've bought this place because you think that housing values, land values are going to go up, there's no real worth of you investing much money in the house itself.
Yeah.
And so what's happened is the houses haven't kind of improved in value in terms of the expense on them because why bother when the land value is going to go up? And so it's this case of when the housing market is all about homes, then there is amount of money spent on homes, the house to actually, because you're living in it, you care about it. When it shifts more towards, okay, the housing market is a market for generating wealth and increasing value, you're caring more about the land. And the less you can spend on your house, kind of the better a bit.
Yeah. I guess, that's why you see all these sort of houses going for millions of dollars, but they're essentially a rundown shack. Yeah, you're paying for the land.
You're paying for the land, and also why renters really struggle to get, I won't say all of them, but, struggle to get some repairs and things done, or their house is crap and the carpet's still old and things like this.
Trying to get the landlord to fix things up.
There's no real benefit to the landlord. They can spend money on it, but it's not going to actually bring them a return. It's that old line from the castle of, you can overcapitalize. If you spend all this money doing up your house, it probably won't transfer into actual much value, because you would have been better off actually spending nothing and your return is going to be even better.
Could this, I guess, then also lead to new builds, like declining in quality, because there's no point in I mean, if you're buying an investment property and you're not going to live in it, I guess you don't care so much if
so you basically are building the minimum standard and doing enough to get by. And it just breeds that. And so that's why, going back to Matt Canavan and tinkering, well, actually getting rid of the capital gains tax discount and bringing the housing market back to this should be about homes leads not just to taking the heat out of the housing market, but actually returns people to thinking actually the dwelling that you're living in should have some value as well, and not just be treating this as, well, it doesn't matter. These people are just renters.
You've got a roof over your head. Why are you complaining that there's no insulation? Yeah.
And that's a real shift.
Yeah.
And it's something that people take for granted. That's how it is now. And I'm like, actually, if you look at the data back in the 80s, it wasn't.
Yeah.
And this didn't happen by accident.
Right. Well, that's probably all we've got time for today, Greg. Thanks so much.
It is. Thank you very much, Elinor. We will all be back with another episode of Dollars and Cents next week. This episode of Dollars and Cents was recorded on the 9th of April, and some things may have changed, especially with Donald Trump.
No.
It's probably changed while we're recording this.
Probably changed 6 times.
Six times. If you would like to read all about why we're not going to have a recession, you can head on over to Guardian Australia and read my column there. For all other information and details and research and great columns, head over to The Point. thepoint.com.au. There is smashing. There is masses of information and great reads there. Check it out. As always, our music is from Blue Dot Sessions. Everyone, have a great week. We will see you again next week. Bye.
See ya.